Hey there, folks. So I'm going to talk to you about your the writing for the long essay for the EOC, and you'll have to just excuse me. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I sound a little nasally. But I'm going to walk you through what's in your packet. That way, even if you miss class, you can see some instruction and know how to work through the packet to see what's on the EOC. So, in your EOC packet, if you look on page 2 is where it starts, you have an article that's called License the Cats, which is basically the whole thing is about owning exotic pets like lions or tigers. And this article talks about how people should be able to own those pets, but they need to have a license to do so because that ensures that the pet can be taken care of. If you go to page 3, it's called Ban the Ownership of Exotic Pets, and then this argument makes the stance that people shouldn't be able to own these animals at all because it's just not good for the animals, and people don't take proper care of them, and then they have too many of them, etc. So then you move on to, this is how the EOC will look also. So the EOC will have 2 articles that have 2 different sides or 2 different opinions or 2 pieces of information. And then you'll have to choose, if you're going to do an argument, you'll have to choose which side you're going to argue for. And then you're going to have to build an argument and use information from both articles. So in this particular instance, before that, on that day that you have to write the essay, you have to read the 2 articles. There's, I believe, 3 multiple choice questions, and then there's a small short constructed response, and then there's the big essay. I always tell kids, read the 2 articles, go all the way to the end, click next, 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 until you get to the thing that says writing task. I'm going to show you what that looks like in a minute on here. The writing task is where you write your full essay. Don't get fooled and write your full essay for the short constructed response, because that's only supposed to be about a paragraph. So make sure you write the full essay where it says writing task, and then once you get to that part, that's where you'll write an intro paragraph, body paragraphs, conclusion. A argument should have a counterclaim paragraph, just like you guys did. So like saying the other side says this, but they're wrong because whatever. That's not true, or that doesn't matter. So let's go look. So then in our packet, page 2 and 3 was our articles. So page 4 has the 2 multiple choice questions. Page 5 has the short constructed response. So it just says use details on which point of do the authors of both passages agree, and then use details from both passages to support your answers. So if you read the articles, it's clear that both parties don't believe that you should just be able to walk into a store and buy a tiger and go home with it. Like, both people agree that that's not a good idea. So one group says nobody should be able to do it. Another group says you need to be able to have a license at least to do that. But they agree that you shouldn't just be able to own a cat, like a tiger or a lion, without any like regulation. You would have to pull a quote from one, pull a quote from the other, and show and prove that they both agree the same thing. Then the next thing, this is the full essay. Well, actually, that's the rubric. So that's how that little short constructed response is graded, 2, 1, or 0 points. And then here's an example of what one looks like. We'll get to that in another time. But this is what you're looking for when you get to the EOC. When you see writing task, that's where you're writing your full essay. So here was the question. There's currently a debate about people owning exotic animals as pets. Think about both sides of the debate. Should people have the right to own exotic animals? And write an argumentative essay in your own words supporting the side of your debate. Be sure to use information from both passages in your argumentative essay. So, and then you'd have a space to write it. Of course, you're doing it online, so you would need to type it, because that's how it's going to be on the EOC. So if you look over here, I'm going to pull this down. You're going to have an intro, right? And at the end of the intro, you're going to need a thesis, and then body paragraph 1 is over reason number 1. Body paragraph 2 is going to be reason number 2, and body paragraph 3 is going to be counterclaim, and then you're going to have a conclusion. So if I look back at my things, at my articles, I might make an argument like, So I'm going to say that you shouldn't be able to have cats as pets, because one group said that that it's easy to buy them, and then too often the novelty of the cub wears off. Like down here where it says that after several photos of, posting them on social media, and then, or the animal has gained hundreds of pounds, and then it becomes too hard to feed them, right? Providing food and shelter becomes onerous. Many owners find themselves facing a real dilemma: devote the time and resources necessary, or diminish the quality of the animal's life. So I'm going to go, that's going to be one of my reasons. So I'm going to go back here to my essay. Reason number 1, too hard to take care of. Reason number 2, let's go back in and look. People frequently try to get rid of the problem, to try to get rid of the cats, but zoos don't want them because they already have a number of cats, and like they're going to harm your neighbors, even at low prices. So like, let's say, let's go look at our other article. Let's look at the second one and see if they have some other information. This one says that there was a man in Ohio who had 50 exotic pets and he released them into the neighborhood. So like, that's sketchy. This also talks about that, like, they find themselves responsible for owning 700 pounds of wild instinct. Another side of the argument is that it helps extinction. So that's like the counter argument that we should be going against. Mike Tyson owned Bengal tigers, but then he couldn't provide a life for them. He had to like give them up. We don't like restrictions, but the U.S. seized his tigers and put them in a refuge. But I mean, like, obviously you could just avoid all of those problems if you just didn't allow people to own them. 19 out of 50 states already don't think that this is wise. So we have too hard to take care of and too hard to get rid of once you decided you don't want it anymore. And the counterclaim that people say it prevents extinction of animals, but that doesn't matter because people will own too many and it will be dangerous. That's going to be my counter argument. Because I did have this article right here, right, that said that there was a guy who in Ohio who had 50 exotic pets, and then he released them into the neighborhood. So like, that's terrifying. So sure, it will help the extinction of animals, but it shouldn't be at the expense of people's safety. So already I have worked out, my thesis is obviously going to have these 3 reasons in it: that they're hard to take care of, they're hard to get rid of, and that they're dangerous. And then I'm ready to start my paper, and I should make sure that I have quotes from my articles in there. Now, let's just say that you don't get an argumentative essay and instead you get an informational essay. I'm going to show you what that looks like as well. And if you scroll through here, here's what you're going to be graded on. It's called a 2-trait rubric. You're going to be graded on content. You're going to be graded on grammar. So the content section, you get 4 points for it for idea development, organization, and coherence. So you introduce your claim, like you state that you have a side. You counter the opposing side, so you have a counterclaim. You use an organizational strategy. You have paragraphs. You have structure in your paper. You use specific facts from sources. You use words and phrases that are effective to connect, like we have transition words. You maintain a formal style, so you don't use slang or curse words or anything like that. It's formal. And you have a concluding statement. That's a 4. That's a pretty good, solid place for writing. The second part of your 7 points comes from this language. That's like basically grammar. So you use clear sentence structure. You make an attempt to attribute paraphrases. In other words, and citations. You have a parentheses after every quote that you use telling where it came from. And none of your grammar errors make it hard to understand what you're trying to say. So here is their example of how to earn those points. This paragraph, their exemplar, like this is one that were earned all 7 points, is only 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. But they do have an intro paragraph They do have one that states their side. They do have a counterclaim, and they do have a concluding sentence. They do not have citations in here, but the informational one does, so we'll look at that one in a minute. But this says, among the bits of information about the debate about owning exotic pets is the population of the Bengal tiger and its natural habitat, 1,706. This number alone shows that there are some exotic species that need protection. They need a safe place to live that is outside of the wild. So we already know their stance. They're going to say people should be able to own exotic pets. The physician's creed is to do no harm, and that must guide the issue of exotic pet ownership. We can stay true to that creed by licensing. So they're saying we should have a license to do it. We can do that by making the owning that exotic pets expensive and highly regulated. This way, only truly qualified people will be able to house exotic pets. A potential owner would have to guarantee the benefits of the pet's future. A 2-room apartment in New York City would not get approved. A 2,000-acre sanctuary might get approved. So this is their stance for whether we should be able to do it or not. Here's a counterclaim. Some people might say that exotic animals still belong in their own natural environments, but let's go back to the example of the shockingly low number of Bengal tigers that are trying to survive on their own in the wild. Clearly, such population of cats could disappear very quickly through natural disasters, overhunting, diseases, or other causes. With cats in safe sanctuaries, we preserve the species that are in need of our help, plain and simple. We have to do no harm to our exotic animals. Licensing and carefully regulating the ability to allow responsible owners to care for exotic pets would be helping the species that are in need of being saved. So we have reasons, we have a counterclaim, and this earned all the points that they needed. So let's look at what happens if you get an informational paper. So this is called Unpacking the Student Loan Dilemma. This is basically about all the kids who have student loans and how much. So this says 20 million students enter colleges every fall, and that by the end, on average, they find themselves with about $33,000 worth of debt once they are finished. So this is the one about like what is debt, and the second one is about dealing with debt. So the question for the writing task, again, we see writing task. It says the cost of college education has increased substantially in the last several years. Think about the information in both passages and write an informational essay in your own words explaining how incurring, that means gathering, substantial college debt is affecting many recent graduates. So guys, I don't want you to freak out about this idea that it's different than the argument. It's not. They just gave you your claim, your stance that you're trying to prove already. Here's what you're proving. That like the cost of education has gone up, and you're proving that it's affecting graduates, and you're telling me how they're being affected. So if I go here to my example, if I was writing if I was writing an informational paper, this wouldn't be any different than what we were doing. We would just say for our thesis, we would say like students are gathering more debt than ever, and it's affecting what? So that's going to be my thesis. So let's go back here. So let's look at that. I've decided that I'm going to make, this is my thesis that I'm going to write. I've already achieved my 3 reasons here. So students gathering more debt than ever, and it's affecting students by, and then here are my 3 reasons. Making them feel like they can't retire one day, feeling like they can't start a family, and they can't live on their own. So I'll have 1 paragraph about how they won't be able to retire. I'll have 1 paragraph about how they won't be able to save and start a family. And I'll have 1 paragraph about how they're living with their parents instead of going off on their own. And each of those can be found in the paragraph. Like Chloe Peterson here says that she had to move back in with her parents. She thought she was doing well, but then she racked up this debt, and then now I'm back in my old bedroom trying to find a job. So we have proof to go with all of these. These are all basically, it's just like the argument, right? Except you just don't need a counterclaim paragraph. So you'll have a paragraph where you're proving that they can't retire because of the debt. You'll have a paragraph proving that they can't start a family because of debt. And then you'll have a paragraph proving that they have to live with their parents instead of debt. So you're still doing the same thing that you would do in an argument. You're just having an intro with your thesis, and then you have 1 paragraph for each of the ways that it's affecting them, and then your conclusion paragraph. So hopefully that makes sense, and you feel like you're going to be prepared for EOC Day for the writing essay, which is a giant chunk. Like that's 7 points. You know, a multiple choice question is worth 1. So this is 7 times the amount of that multiple choice question. So we want you to do well on that part. All right, guys, make sure you're studying and keeping up, and you can always ask me if you have any questions. Thank you.